Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great Friday afternoon. And we're back for another fun Friday tutorial, class, whatever we want to call it. So this is the project we're going to start making today. This is Prima's Nature Lover. And I did a quick walkthrough of it yesterday, but I forgot a couple of things. So there's the front cover. It is a 6.5, if I remember correctly. Yes, 6.5 by 8 album with a 3-inch spine. I didn't show you what I put on the spine yesterday. And then I didn't show you the back. So I did a little bit of paper piecing here. And then, of course, handmade by Bonnie. And the other thing I forgot to show you yesterday is I remember I kept saying, there's another set of magnets someplace. I can't remember where the other set of magnets is. It's pretty bad when you make the project and you hide something so well that you don't even find it. It's right here. So it's this piece here. And I actually was supposed to decorate it and I forgot to even after I found it yesterday. So that's the little second set of small magnets I used, and of course a booklet in it. And this particular booklet has, of course, the 3 pages. And when I was cutting out for this one, I did use the 12 by 12, and it's one of those sheets that has a whole bunch of cut aparts on it. So that's a little hiding spot I missed yesterday. So I just wanted to touch on that at the very beginning. So here's what we're making. So let's get started and we'll see how far we get and whether we have to do next week or not. So I'm just going to put it over here so I can refer to it when I need to. And I did in my post this morning give you a cutting guide. It's the PDF that's in that post. So if you just look back, you'll find it, and all the cutting measurements are there. And I corrected a few little oopses I had along the way. So the one that's the PDF is the correct one. So let's get started. So like I said, the covers are going to be 6.5 by 8. So you needed to cut 2 pieces of chipboard for that. And then you needed to cut the spine piece, which is a piece of chipboard that's 3 by 8. And we're going to start with this first. Hello, Lynn. How are you today? Hi, Gail. Hi, Dawn. And then the cardstock that we're going to use to wrap this piece of chipboard is a piece that measures 6 by 10. So let's get started. Now, Lynn's here today. And Lynn, you sent me these wonderful Cricut cut out my name and the squirrels and the hearts. I haven't put them on yet, but it's on my list of things to do. Just I didn't want you to see these and see that I had added the beautification to them. It's on my list. It just hasn't happened yet. So, of course, I'm going to use the spacers that Tammy sells in the store. And remember, because this is the spine piece, we want to have 1.5 inches and 1 inch at the top, right? And that's what the spacers help us with. They help us get our spacing down so that when we lay down our piece of chipboard, we have the right spacing around it. And oh yes, while I'm on my little tangent of things I received, I believe it was Fauna. I'm 100% sure. Lynn can help me with this. She made me this wonderful little holder for my spacers. So I got to give a shout out and a thank you. And Tammy has something similar for sale in the store. It's exactly for this. It's to hold your spacers and keep them safe. And so you know where they are at all times. So remember, check that out. So let's get started. I have put my adhesive on the back of my chipboard already. That's what I thought it was. But the ones that are for sale in the store, Fauna did not make them. Janice made them, I think, if I recall correctly. They were a couple of days ago, Lynn. I haven't checked recently. So maybe I shouldn't have said that. I know the spacers are for sure. Well, they were a couple of days ago. So let's lay down our piece of chipboard. And again, I am using Tammy's album cover construction. Just gonna lay these off to the side and give it a good burnish because I love how clean my edges. I'll just show you this for a second. This is what I love about this system. Just how clean everything is where the spine and the front and back cover meet. And I know some people like that wrap look, and you can do it that way if you want to. You just wrap it to the outside. But I prefer wrapping it to the inside, and I'll show you as we move along. But I just like how clean, neat, and you know what? There's no cracking. That's the other bonus of it. And if you're using the artisan cardstock, there definitely is no cracking. And that is what I'm using today. I'm using the Craft Artisan. So we're going to fold over. And then we're going to repeat on the long sides. So it's a little warm here today. Not as hot as it was about a week and a half ago, but it's still pretty warm. And as you know, or some of you know, I do live in Canada, and I live in the Okanagan in Canada, in British Columbia. And we are having not so much here in the Okanagan. We've had a few fires. Well, actually more than a few fires. But so far, everything is good in my part of the world. Hi, Alice. So glad you could join us. So just like we always do, I want to cut out my rectangles. So what I want to do is I want to cut right up to about a 1/16 of an inch away from the corner of that board. So rotate. And we are going to repeat this. Except when you do something like that, but we're going to be fine. I'm going to fix that. When you rip the chipboard because you're going, oh, I can make this work. If that would have happened to me a couple of years ago, I would have had a complete meltdown. Going, I've wrecked my project. Now I just say, oh, we can fix that. And we can. So let's do the other two corners. And I saw Gail was on. Are you still there, Gail? Because Gail also lives in the Okanagan. And we're going to cut up. I did it on that side too. I hope this is not a sign of how my day's going to go. All right. So now we're going to miter. I'm only going to miter the two short ends to start with. See, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to fix my little issue here. And then by the time we're done with our glue, we're never going to know that happened. Let's do this end. And then rotate. I promise you, you're never going to know that I ripped it because I was being a little too heavy-handed. So here's what we're going to do. So this is a trick if it ever happens to you. All I'm doing is I'm lifting up a little piece of paper and I'm putting some glue under it. And then I'm going to lay it back down as soon as I find a baby wipe that's dry. There we go. And I'm just rubbing it down. And voila, my little tear is fixed. And I promise we're not going to see any of it. And the one I did over here, you can hardly see, but we'll give it a little glue too. Sorry, my head got in the way there. All right, so now let's take our glue, and I like to run a bead of glue right along the edge of the chipboard. And I have just recently, hello, Miss Fauna. I was just telling everybody that you made this for me and how much I love it, how I use it every day. Well, every day that I make an album cover. So thank you again for your thoughtful gift. And as usual, I was a little bit heavy-handed with my glue. So again, we're just going to repeat on this side. And down. I saw it's really hot at your place, Fauna. And Tammy was telling me that it's like 100 at her place today. And her power is going out here if it's not out already. And it's 100. It's an emergency power outage. And so she's going to be there. Hello, Miss Bonnie D. So Tammy's going to be at home with 100 Fahrenheit and no air conditioning. Wouldn't like that at all. So for those of you that don't know, I also know Bonnie D, and she also lives in the Okanagan, about an hour and a half from where I live, along with Gail. It's nice that you could join us. That the heat was crazy, Lynn. We're more at our normal temperature today. And of course, I'm going to say it in Celsius because that's what we have here. And my watch is telling me it's like 29 right now. So 29 is just getting to be a little warm. So what I am doing right now is I am adding some dry adhesive to my wings that I created. And that way, when I miter my wings, as I call these, well, 2 weeks ago, Fauna, we had temperatures, we had crazy hot. I guess it's a week ago. I guess by now, a week ago, it was breaking. But we had some crazy hot temperatures here. And for the end of June, it's scary because that means that we're in for a long, dry, hot summer. They've already put fire bans on here. They're already asking us to stay out of the bush here because it's just that dry. All right, so what I did, I'm going to burnish these and then I'll show you what I did. So these are the 1.5-inch wings that we created when we were creating the spine. And I've added down my dry adhesive. And that way, when I go to miter, I have edge-to-edge coverage when I'm done. Like I say, it's just my thing I like to do. Yes, I'm wasting a little bit of score tape, but you know what? I'm okay with that because I hardly use the amount of score tape I once did when I make an album. Because I use the art glitter glue 95% of the time. Okay, so that's our wing piece. And of course, I just gave you the measurements and I didn't talk about this width. So I'm leaving 1.5 inches on either side of the spine. Yes, Lynn, I kind of like the mid-70s. Like I say, it's just getting to the point here where I'm finding it's going to be a warm afternoon. So we're just going to see how the day progresses. We had a thunderstorm roll. Hi, Denise. We had a thunderstorm roll through here last night when I was out walking, and we had a hit of lightning that, oh my gosh, it was so close. we didn't stay out walking very long. So again, the actual front and back cover measures 6.5 by 8. And the pieces I'm going to be wrapping the front and back cover with is a piece of cardstock that measures 8.5 by 10. And what you always want to remember is you want to leave an inch all the way around the edge of the chipboard. So that's why I'm going to have my kind of pinky orange. I think it's orange, not pink. My other one away because I don't need it anymore. And again, these are spacers that Tammy does sell in her store. And if you don't have access to Tammy's store, you can always make your spacers out of chipboard. So you'd need 2 that are 1 inch, and you'd need 1 that's 1.5 inches. So again, I put my adhesive, which is the dry adhesive, on the back of my chipboard already. And I didn't have any sheets. I must remember to order some because it is a bit faster. But I have this wider score tape that I need to use up before it loses its sticky. Now, I've never had score tape lose its sticky, but I don't know if it can happen. So I'm just pushing it right up to the top and right up against that spacer that is on the left-hand side. So move those out of our way. I need them again. We're going to flip this over, kind of move my scoreboard. I'm going to give it a good furnish. And then we're going to repeat our folding. So we're going to fold all 4 sides. And remember, this is the Artisan Craft cardstock, so I know I can fold it over the way I'm folding it, and I don't have to worry about it cracking, which is a good thing. And I'm doing the 2 long sides. And is anybody from the East Coast on here today? Because they had, I guess, a terrible storm. It was that tropical Elsa that came up through Florida. And that looked pretty scary with the water and all that fun stuff. Guess it's not really funny or fun. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my 4 squares. And I'm going to take my scissors and basically I'm cutting up to where those 2 fold lines intersect. And I'm going to do the other side. And hopefully I don't repeat what I did on the spine. That one's good. Sometimes I get talking and I should pay more attention. I'm just cutting up to where, so you're like about a 1/16 of an inch away from that piece of chipboard, give or take. So my idea today is we are going to get the cover assembled. We're going to get the hinges made and in the book and get the pages in. And then depending on time, we might continue with the flips and the flaps, but I'm thinking we're going to come back next Friday on Fun Friday and finish our project then. I've already done a walkthrough of the project. It's on Scrapbookers and it's on my YouTube channel, All Things Paper by Bonnie. Okay, so we are going to work on, today I'm going to fold my sides over first. My 2 long sides, whoops, don't get ahead of yourself, Bonnie. You did not mind your corners. Somebody didn't stop me. But it's okay, we'll just get rid of the glue. So we want to miter all of our edges on the tabs. And that just gives a nice clean look when we have it all assembled. again. And let's get rid of all those pieces. All right, now we're ready for the glue. So I mitered all my 1-inch tabs. I'm going to get rid of the extra glue that was on my tip. And now we're just running a bead of glue along the edge of the chipboard. And like I say, I used to do all of this with dry adhesive. And now that I use the liquid glue, one, it goes much faster. I believe it's cheaper. And it holds just as well, at least in our very dry Okanagan climate. I've had no issues, and I haven't taken any of these to Ontario yet, where the rest of my family lives. So I'll have to give you a report on a damper climate once I know. So let's do the other long side. And all I ever say is I like to do them the same. I don't really have a preference for which way I prefer the look. Some people do. Some people want to have all their covers looking the same, and I'll explain that in just one second here, what I'm trying to say. So some people always fold the sides first, or some people always fold the 2 top tabs first. I tend to fold however my heart is singing that day. And I see a little bit of a burr right there that I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of that before I actually, there we go. All right. I don't think oh yeah, maybe you got to see that burr a little bit. So now let's do the top and the bottom. So we're just repeating adhesive right along the chipboard. And then we're going to take our burnishing tool. And like I pull it down towards the center of the piece of chipboard because I want it to be a nice tight fit to the edge of the chipboard, if that makes sense. So, and the reason that we put adhesive along the edge of the chipboard is it softens the fibers and prevents cracking. And when you have glue right along the edge of the chipboard, you have a better seal of the cardstock, because that's how I'm going to say it. So we're just going to pull it down. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling towards the center of the chipboard. And remember, the nice thing about the art glitter glue is it does dry clear. And I see I have one more burr right there. And so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my scissors, carefully snip that burr away. And there is one cover completed. Now my burnishing tool has some little grooves on it. And I love that because it lets me go around and just give all my edges a nice finished look. So there's one cover. So we are going to repeat that on our second piece. I'm going to get my 1-inch spacers. I'm going to pull all the tape off of my chipboard, and I did already burnish this. So remember, you should always burnish your dry adhesive. And then we're going to repeat, and it was push it up to that 1-inch spacer at the top and to that 1-inch spacer at the side. And yes, I use my scoreboard as a tool when I am creating because it helps me keep everything nice and square. So I'm burnishing that tape. Now I'm going to fold over my cardstock, just like we did the first time. And repeat. And repeat again. And we're doing that to all 4 sides. Excellent. And now we're going to cut away our extra. So we're going to cut out our squares in each corner. And again, we're just cutting up to the X, about a 1/16 of an inch away from the chipboard, give or take. And there's 1. And 2. 2 more to go. You guys are all really quiet. Anybody working with me, or are you just watching? Or maybe you all left because it doesn't tell me today how many people. What does if I look over at my other screen? So I'm not alone, I know that. Just really quiet. Are you doing other things while you're listening to me? I sometimes do that. All right, so there's our corners. And now let's miter the 1-inch tabs. So we're repeating this 8 times. And like I say, I just lay my scissors up against the chipboard and then I just pivot them. And whatever I get is what I cut away. And down to 1. No, that was the last set. Awesome. Hi, Renee. Yes, I saw that. I looked over at my other screen. For some reason, my iPad today is not showing me how many people are watching with me. And I was thinking, am I all alone today? Then I looked at the other screen and I went, no, I missed one. I thought I had. So we're making a mini album using the Prima's Nature. Oh, yes, Lynn. Yes. Well, that's good. Like I say, sometimes it's easier just to listen and then go back if the project is something that you really like, or maybe I'll give you a hint or a tip that you can take and use in another project. Because that's what I always try and do, is give you guys some tips. Are you, Bonnie? I love wrapping them this way. I absolutely love this album cover technique. It's clean, it's crisp. I've had no issues with cracking. And like I say, since I use the art glitter glue to wrap the 1-inch tabs. Oh, Renee, you need to check it out. I don't even have the cover sheet for, I think I've got the 6x6 cover sheet. Just give me 1 second here. Just to give you a quick, sorry for all the noise I'm making. But this is it. It's got the blues and some black, and the black on the 6x6 or 12x12 single sheets is foiled, just like the blue is foiled. The butterflies are foiled, and Bonnie, even these birds are foiled on the 12 by 12 single sheets. The 6 by 6 is not foiled. So this is the collection that I made my album with. So if you go back to my YouTube channel, Renee, which is All Things Papers by Bonnie, you can watch the walkthrough of the project. And like I say, when I saw this just spoke to me, and I said, I need to make an album with that. It is, Bonnie. It is the most gorgeous paper, in my opinion, that Prima has come out with in a long time. And that's my opinion. I'm sure others would have a different opinion, but that's okay. So there's that side, and one more. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. It's the one thing I can't do when I'm on live is I can't add things from the store page. And again, so remember, we put the beaded glue along all 4 sides of the chipboard and then used glue to wrap it with. All right, so I'm going to put my pin back in my glue. We're not going to need that for a bit. And I just want to rub the edges. And there we are. Okay, so there's our 2 covers completed. And there's our spine piece. So I am going to flip my scoreboard around because I'd like it to be closer to me for this application. I'm just double checking that I haven't taken you guys out of the shot, which I have not. I like to make sure I give a little burnish right along the edge of the chipboard, and I refer to this as the good side, right along the edge of the chipboard, because what I want to do is I want to make sure that my wings are sitting just a little lower than the actual piece of chipboard that's been wrapped. And because I'm using Artisan, I know I can do this, and I will not have any cracking happening. Okay, so I'm going to lay this right over here on the left-hand side. Remember, my scoreboard is upside down. I'm going to remove the backing from one of the wings, from one of the 1.5 inch wings. I'm taking my front cover or my back cover, it doesn't really matter. I'm lining it up, and literally what I'm doing is I'm butting it right up along the edge of the chipboard of the spine and making sure that I stay nice and straight along the top. And then I always like to pick it up really quick in case I have messed up. And what I'm looking for is I'm making sure that they're nice and square with each other. If that makes sense. I'm hoping you can kind of see that. And I'll give it a quick burnish on this side. And once you do this a few times, you'll never go back and make your covers any other way. So again, I'm using my scoreboard as a tool to keep things nice and square. I'm lifting the tape from the wing. And I did try the liquid glue to attach the spine to the front and back cover, and I just found it so messy. So I went back to score tape. So there's what I wanted. Making sure I'm happy with that. And there's, I always call this the wonky cover because it kind of goes all over the place. And that's why we need to have our spine reinforcement piece. So the spine reinforcement piece for this project is a piece of cardstock that measures 7 7/8 by 8. And I put a little arrow on my piece of cardstock so I would remember which way was the 7 7/8, because you just want it slightly shorter than your actual album cover. So my album cover is 8 inches high, and this piece of paper is 7 7/8, just so nothing's hanging over. And I move that little label. I did put dry adhesive on the back. Like I say, this is another place where I just have not even tried to think about using glue. I want everything to be secure. And I don't want any glue being in the wrong spots. I guess that's how I'm going to say it. And then from along the bottom. And again, just check which direction your arrow is. So my arrow is telling me. Bring this down here. And I will turn my scoreboard around here in a second, but I'll just leave it like this. So what I'm doing is I'm centering it from side to side, top to bottom. Sorry for my head for a second. And when I'm happy, I'm just going to drop it down like so. And remember, you're going to be covering this with cardstock or with pattern paper, so nobody's going to see if you're off a little bit, I promise. All right, so now let's get our burnishing tool, and my scoreboard centered again in the middle of my shot. Move all my tools to one side, since I haven't got my desk completely messed yet, but I will. And I've burnished it. And now I'm going to take a few of my tools, because I use a couple of different things, and I just start forming my book, taking my time. We're not in a race. And I promise, the more time you take doing this, the better your book is going to look. Turn it around. And again. Give it a good burnish. So what I'm doing is I'm burnishing between the spine and the front or back cover. That's what I'm doing. So I'm just going to change up my tool here for a second. And I just like this one too because it's a little skinnier and it just helps to give me a much crisper. And there we are. And I always take my fingers and just, I rub it or squeeze my spine after I've done all of that, just to make sure that everything is nice and square. And I'm very happy with that. And there in 40 minutes, when I had the chipboard cut and had my adhesive on it, we had the cover finished. Well, not finished, but to the point that we're ready to start thinking about our spine, our hinges. So before I even go to the hinges, I have an idea of what I'm going to cover this particular album with. So I got a piece of pattern paper. It's an old Graphic 45 paper pad I had laying around. I think Tammy had it in the store at one point. I'm not even sure what it's called. Lost in Paradise, I think is the name of the collection. Doesn't sound right, but that's what I'm going to say it is. Anyway, I had this paper laying around and I went, this is the perfect project for it. So all I do is I cut my piece of pattern paper at 3 inches. I cut it the same width as my spine because when you fold it, all you do have to have is the clearance because you're going to have that little space. So when you put on your piece of pattern paper for the front and back cover, you don't want a big gap here. And if you made this smaller, this piece of pattern paper smaller, then that's what you'd end up with. And it's 1/8 of an inch shorter than the book, so it's 7 7/8, just like our spine reinforcement piece. So I've inked the edges of that. And I'm just going to add my adhesive to the back side. Oh, that was a good save. I thought it was going to end up upside down. Okay. So we're just going to line it up side to side. And I like to make sure that I've checked to make sure that my book is still closed before that glue has a complete time to dry, and it will. I'll give it a good burnish. Have my wipe handy. All right. And there is our piece of pattern paper that's going to go under the hinge system in place. So we're going to set this aside and it can dry. And then we're going to go back to the instructions. And the instructions said we needed a hinge piece that measures 4.5 by 7.5. And here I have it right here. So it's 4.5 by 7.5 because our pages are going to be 7.5 inches because I made them a half inch smaller than the cover. I just want my instructions back in here for a second. Oh, the other thing I should tell you is I used approximately 17 sheets of 12 by 12 craft cardstock when I was creating this album. So just as an FYI for you guys, when you're thinking about how much cardstock am I going to need. So I also said in my walkthrough that I made this with 3/4 inch gussets between my hinges. So I have 2 gussets on this piece of cardstock. So let's do our scoring. So we scored at 1/2, 1, 1 3/4, 2 1/4, 2 3/4, 3.5, and 3 3/4. Now, I should also tell you the reason I did these 3/4 inch gussets is because in this collection, there were these butterflies, and I really wanted to use them on my pages. And the only way I thought I could accommodate that was with that wider gusset. So like right here, this butterfly, if I had not made that wider gusset, we wouldn't have been able to put the butterfly in there. And the seam binding that I use for closures. So that is why that wider gusset was used. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to fold all those score lines. And I like to always fold away from myself because I find when I'm folding away from myself, just putting the pin back in my glue. When I fold away from myself, I get a much crisper fold crease in my paper. And then this is the first hinge. So I'm folding it back. And today we're going to do all our hinges first. So again, I'm now jumping over, I hope you can see this, to this score line right here. So the one that's in the middle of the 2 1/2-inch pieces. And I'm folding that away from myself. And I'm giving it a good burnish. And I'm going to stand it up, and that will create. So there's one gusset. That's 3/4 inch. And I know you're looking at them going, that's really wide. You know what? I really like the wider gusset because then I don't have to worry about embellishing too much. And by the time you get your pictures in there, you're going to be thankful for that room. So now I'm skipping the 3/4 and I'm moving on to this next set of 1/2 inch score lines, I guess is what I'm going to say. And in the middle one, so that middle score line of the 1/2 inch, I am now folding that one back on itself. And what I mean by back on itself is it's down to the bottom of your scoreboard and I'm folding it over away from myself. And I'm giving that a good burnish. And then I'm going to stand it up. And there we go. There are our 3 hinges and our 2 3/4 inch gussets. Now I'm going to turn it over because, believe it or not, I am going to use my liquid glue. It took me a long time to believe that I could make a strong enough hinge using the liquid glue. But now that I have, I'd never go back to using score tape. Yes, you have to give it a second or 2 more to dry, but I'm okay with that. All right, so we're just going to fold this over. I'm going to make sure that if I have any glue, I've got it under control. Hi, Diane. No, you're never late. Remember, it stays recorded. So we're making the Nature's Lover. The Prima Nature's Lover is the paper we're using for this mini album. And it's a 3-page. The cover is 6.5 by 8. And the pages are 6 by 7.5. And we're going to have 3 of them. We're doing 3/4 inch gussets so that we have enough room for embellishments. Because, as I said, I wanted to use these beautiful butterflies that came with this collection. And I'll show them again, I'm sure, because I think they're just stunning. So this is the middle hinge. Give it a good burnish, making sure that if the glue seeps out, we got something to wipe it up with. Burnish, burnish. It's one of those times where I go, you can never not burnish enough. And yes, you can start folding them already. Fold them back and forth so they remember what it is you're going to want this paper to do. Because remember, it's just paper. It's just another fiber. And glue. Now we're going to fold this over. And give it a good burnish. Stand it up. Burnish it again. And then we're going to go the other way. We're going to fold them all the other way and give them a good burnish. Because remember, this is the mechanism that turns your pages. So you want to make sure that you have it secure. So I always like to make sure that I'm reasonably square. And how I do that is I put my spine piece in my scoreboard and I just make sure that I'm pretty close at the top and the bottom. So I am sort of sitting at not quite 1 5/8 inches for my actual hinge piece. And you're going, but you have a 3-inch spine. I'll show you in a second. And I'm really good with this because I'm just perfect all the way down. So that makes me happy. Let's bring the book back in. Put it here in front of us. Now what we want to do is when we're centering our spine piece, we're centering it top to bottom and left to right. And remember I said we had 3/4 inch gussets. So we want to make sure that we have 3/4 inch on the right-hand side and the left-hand side. And And I believe I'm going to want to put some little pencil marks. So excuse me for my reach. And I'm just going to move all of this stuff out of my way for a second. And the reason I want to measure it is it'll just make me feel better. And I know it's nice and straight. You can erase these lines after. Let's just make sure that that was correct. So I'm just taking a pencil and running it along the edge. And see, I moved a little bit. So let's get this up here near the top. So yeah, another little mark there. And there. And at the top and the bottom, you should have about 1/4 of an inch. Because remember, it's 1/2 of an inch shorter than your cover. All right, so can I see my little pencil marks? Yes, I can. So there's one right here, and there's one here, and there's one here. And because this one at the top doesn't look like 3/4 of an inch, and it is. Okay, so I'm happy. Oh, I didn't see Nicole sneak in. How is the weather there, Nicole? Sally showed a picture at her house today, and I saw on the news that I guess they're having some flooding in New York because of that storm. And I went, wow. And all we're worried about here is forest fires. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Drying out is good for you guys. So now I'm going to take my art glitter glue, and I'm going to give a generous amount of glue to the back of each of those gussets. I could send you some of our dryness, Nicole. I don't want all the rain you had, but I'd sure take some of it. Because even with that lightning last night, we didn't get any rain with it, so that's scary. All right, so I'm just going to turn my book sideways because I want to be able to see my marks so that when I'm laying this down, and here is the bonus to using the liquid adhesive when you're putting when you're putting your hinge in your book, is it gives you a couple of seconds to double check everything. So I just want to make sure I got 3/4 there. Yes. And yes. And then I got 1/4 inch at the bottom, 1/4 at the top. I'm happy. Yes, Renee, we've had several in our province that have been caused by lightning. It's not a good July. Let's just say that. It's way too hot and way too dry for us here. This is like the weather we should be having sort of middle of August, end of August. I live in British Columbia, Canada, in the Okanagan. So if you know where Kelowna, British Columbia is, I'm about 1.5 hours south, or 40 minutes from the American border. So I am now burnishing my gussets with my burnishing tool because I want my hinge to be well placed. I don't want it to move ever. And as for that little pencil line, if it really bugs you, you can take your eraser and just erase those lines. It's only the one there that I could see. So yes, we are on a fire ban. They're asking us not to go in the bush. And of course, that's our favorite kind of camping is bush camping. So we were supposed to camp next week and we're not. That's right, Renee. I think you've told me that before. Yes, I'm probably about 5 hours east, and yeah, not that far north. So there are our hinges in our mini album. And that took us an hour and 55 minutes. That's right, Renee, you're in Bonnie Lake. So you're very close to Renee too. So the next thing we're going to work on is our base pages. And our base pages measure 7.5 by 12. And on the 12-inch side, oh, we got lots of people from Washington, people from British Columbia. It's a Western show today almost, except for Nicole. And I don't know if there's anybody else from back east that's watching, but welcome to everybody. So on the 12-inch side, we want to score at 6 on each one of those base pages. And then we're going to $12 of rain in one day. Oh, I'm sorry. That was an old comment that I just saw. It does seem like it's a Washington kind of day, Lynn. Washington, British Columbia kind of day. So burnish those score lines on all 3 pieces. And the last one. Oh, we've got North Carolina. Nice that you could join us, Sharon. Sometimes people sneak in and I don't get to say hi to them. So there are our base pages. Now we want to bring the album back in. And I need a piece of white paper because I easily admit that I have old eyes. And sometimes on color on color, I have a hard time seeing where I want things positioned. Well, you know what, Sharon? You live in Western North Carolina. That's pretty close to us as the crows fly. So take one of your base pages, and I am starting at the back of my album. I'm going to lay down my white piece of paper so I can see what I'm doing. I don't know where I learned this trick along my way, but I did. I am then taking my base page, and I am butting it up right to the edge of the hinge. So now that would be why, or that's one of the reasons why I want to make sure my hinge is nice and straight. Because if your hinge mechanism is askew, then your pages are going to be askew and there's no way to get them straight again. Wouldn't that be nice, Renee? If there was a retreat in Washington? Yes. Yes. But you know what? Tammy has to make choices and she can't be everywhere. So this year she's just doing the 2 retreats in Utah. And so far I know that there is a retreat in Utah of 2022 in the spring. And she just announced this past week that she's going to Orlando, Florida in June of 2022. And I believe there might still be a few spaces available for that retreat. The spring Utah retreat is sold out, but the retreat in Orlando, which is by SeaWorld, close to Disney, I understand. Maybe Nicole can verify that for me because that's where she lives. So yes, if you've never been to one of Tammy's retreats, you really got to put it on your bucket list because my goodness, it is not a crop. It is a retreat. You get 3 projects with everything you need to create them. I'm talking you get your cardstock, you get your pattern paper, you get your embellishments, and you get the instructor right there. Lots of helpers. It is the most, I always go, where did the 3 days go when it's all done? Hello, Miss Sally. So nice that you could join us. Actually, Sally's the one. She can tell you just how much fun a CCC retreat can be. It is the most amazing time. Yes, Nicole, absolutely. Because Jen Palmer, one of the other designers, made these at Christmas, and I was lucky enough to be given one. And it is just like that. You become sisters of choice with each other. They are your other family. And this year, when I haven't been able to get down to any of the retreats because of the border closure, I have certainly missed my time that I spend with my crafting family. So that was the first page, or in this case, it's actually the last page of our album in. And the thing I like about this method is they lay flat. The pages are flat. So let's get our white piece of paper. And yes, Lynn, it is so true. You make so many friends at the retreats. You know, and it's like when we all get back together again, it's like we just pick up where we left off. And that's one of the coolest things about a CC retreat. It's full of laughter. It's full of fun. I'm hoping, Diane, I am really got my fingers crossed that that border will be open for the October retreat. So what I am checking here is I am making sure that my page 2 is lining up with the outside edges of page 1. That's why I pulled out my white piece of paper, because I wanted to see. Yes, Bonnie, because Bonnie is one of 3, 5, several Canadians that was supposed to go to Las Vegas in 2020, and we couldn't because of the border closures. And so we have been waiting patiently for that border to open, and I'm feeling hopeful that maybe it will be open by the fall, you know. So fold back your hinge. I'm talking too much and I'm not concentrating, so I need to tell you what I'm doing. Fold back your hinge, and again, you want to add the glue. Yes, when I start talking about my CCC family, it's very hard for me to focus because I've missed them so much this year. So fold over your hinge onto your page. Give it a good burnish. Oh, yes, that does happen, Renee. And fold it the other way. So if there's any glue that has seeped out, you've caught that. And there it is. And we'll just do one more. Well, Lynn, you already know how much I've missed you guys and got my fingers crossed, okay? But I have to show you, if any of you watched the retreat in the spring, I did get to make an appearance at that retreat thanks to Fauna. And here's Flat Bonnie having a beverage, and here's Flat Bonnie doing what Flat Bonnie does. She teaches. So, yes, it was nice of them to include me that way, and then they sent them to me. So I keep them handy. It is. Flat Bonnie was the best. It was like I was at the retreat. Now run a bead of glue along the bottom of your base page, and also run a bead of glue on the hinge, making sure to keep it back from the edge so that if you have any seepage, you don't end up with a big mess. I know, doesn't it? Fauna did a really good job. Because when I saw them, I went, oh my goodness, it's a very good likeness. Even down to, it's my favorite colors, blue. Like I say, it was like I was there. Which was very kind of them. All right, so there is page 2 now in our book. And we have one more page to put in, and our time's going very well. So I think we'll start working on the front or back cover inside too. So again, we want to line this up. And these have been going in almost perfect today. But I'm going to show you something. Always worry about how your page is lining up over here at the outside edge. Because if you need to fix anything here at the other side, it's okay because it's right at the hinge. Nobody's going to notice it. So if you're off a little over here, no one is ever going to notice it. Where you want to make sure you're nice and square is out here at the finished edge of your page so that it lays flat. It looks nice as people are turning the pages in your album. So I'm very happy with that. So I am going to add my adhesive to the hinge. So this is the back side of the hinge that I'm putting the adhesive on, or the side that is closest to my base page right now. Oh, I think I do it just like Tammy does it, don't I? I have to watch Tammy. How I learned to do my pages this way was by watching Tammy Renee. And like I say, I never like to rush this process because this is what gives you your album construction. This is what's going to hold your book together for years and years. So you want to make sure that you got it nice and straight, everything's in its right place. So again, I'm just running a bead of glue along the bottom. You could also run a bead of glue along the top, but I choose not to just in case I want to put an insert into my pages. Hi, Julianne. No, you're never late. It'll be recorded. We are today making a 3-page folio with 3/4 of an inch gussets. And I used Prima's Nature Lover to create my album. That's not what this piece of paper is. There is a walkthrough of the actual tutorial, or the walkthrough of the finished project. And it's a beautiful paper line. If you like the outdoors, if you love birds and butterflies, it's a perfect paper. So there you go. And in an hour and 10 minutes, we have our 3 pages in our album with me talking. And there we go, 3 pages in our album. It looks like this, Julianne. Nobody else has complained, Lynn, or not complained, but told me that they're freezing. I don't appear to be freezing here. Let me know. How is it for everybody else? So this is the paper. I had 3 12x12 of each design, or the 6x6 paper pad, the butterflies, the wooden frames. I'll just bring the book back in. This frame is also part of that collection. The butterflies, flowers, these 2 little flowers come in a package. It's beautiful paper. So there is a walkthrough of the actual album. Okay, good to know, Diane. I think maybe it's at your end, Lynn. All right, so there is 3 pages in our album. Just going to set this aside for a minute so I can bring the inside front cover. And I'm going to bring the book back in because I want to show you exactly what I did. Yes, you know what, Renee? I used to make my pages like that where I would decorate them and everything. And then I would add them to the book. And I really like doing it this other way. Because then if you've got, so in the case like this, so when I'm adding something that's on the hinge side, like this flap, I can make sure that my whole page is still going to turn nicely before I put it into my, before I got it all decorated and need to change something. I have it in my book, and I know my page is going to turn freely. So that's what I really, really, really like about doing it this way. So we use seam binding on this particular album, and I have a 1/4 of an inch gusset on the left and right hand side because I wanted enough room for my waterfall that goes down the middle. Okay, so that's why we have an extra 1/4 inch. And I need to get out my seam binding. I meant to put my seam binding to dry so it'll be crinkly. So this next one is not going to have any crinkled seam binding. Oh well, it's the way it goes. So give me a second. I forgot to pull out seam binding. I think I'm going to go with this cream color because I think that'll be a good match for what paper I'm using for this one. So the seam binding I used in this particular project was, I think Tammy calls that the natural. Give me one quick. Second. You know what? There's no name on it. I believe it's the natural. Okay. So I like to be extremely generous with my seam binding. I like to have about 24 inches when I'm going to use it with this application, because that way I have enough to tie it and enough to tie it. That's a good way to put it. So what we want to do is we want to center our seam binding on the inside, left and right, on the inside of your front cover, left and right hand side. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to take a little measure. I know people are going to say, oh, there it comes out again. Yes. I love my Tim Holtz ruler. I know a lot of people find it hard to read it, but I love it. So I'm just going centering it. I actually do, Renee, if you go into Country Craft Creations and find my post I made this morning when I said I was going to be live today, I did put the cutting guide as a PDF. And I will try to remember to put it in the guides, or at least I think it's still called guides. So I am using some dry adhesive for this application. You could use the liquid glue. I just like it to be a little quicker, hence why. And we're going to burnish. Going to lift the backing, but I'm going to keep the backing. So I'm taking one side of my seam binding and I'm going to lay it down with the raw edge. Let me turn the book the right way. I'm going to take one side of my seam binding and with the raw edge going towards the middle of the chipboard and centering it as close as I can to center. I'm laying that side of the seam binding down. And then I'm stringing it all the way over here. So I want my other raw edge of the seam binding. Lift up the score tape, backing. And again, I'm measuring or lining it up with my little pencil mark I created. And I'm just going to lay this on top of it for right now. And we're just going to lay that out of the way. I don't always cut my seam binding right away because it's going to start to fray. Sometimes I will leave it and cut it at the very end. Just depends on if it gets in my way. And I had really wanted to crinkle this, but you know what? I'll be okay with it like this. Okay, so the measurements for our cardstock for the inside front cover are, we have 2 pieces. Piece number 1 is a piece that measures 5.5 by 8. And we might cut a 1/16 off of this. I just don't know yet. It's just going to depend on how it lines up with the front cover. And then the second piece of cardstock measures 6.5 by 8. And this is the left and right flap that I showed you a few minutes ago. So one is going to be over on, make sure I get these the right way. The short one, or the 5.5, is on the right side, and the 6.5 is on the left side. So what I'm measuring for, looking at right now, is I just want to make sure that top to bottom, and I'm going to be happy with that top to bottom. All right, so just pull this back out. So on the piece that measured 5.5 by 8, you are going to score at 1/2 and 3/4. On the piece that measured 6.5 by 8, you are again going to score at 1.5 and at 3/4. And then I'm going to fold on my score lines. I'm going to burnish my score lines. And then I want to fold that 1/2 inch tab. Sometimes it's a little tricky. So I start it and then I'll turn it over. So I folded the 1/2 inch tab and now I'm going to burnish it like so. And if you can't find it, Renee, if you just watch the recording, I give you all the measurements as we go along. So again, we're going to fold on the score line. So there's the 1/2 inch score line. And now I'm going to fold on the 3/4 inch score line. And that sometimes is an easy way to do it. There we go. And so there's our two pieces. So this is the one that's going to be on the right-hand side of the inside cover, and this is the left-hand side. So we want to miter. So we only want to miter the 1/2 inch tab. Don't miter that 3/4 inch. So just from the 1/2 inch score line, miter your tab like so. And again. So. Get those little bits out of the way. All right, we're going to bring our book back in. So like I said to you before, the piece that is 6.5 inches wide, or was 6.5 inches wide, it is, one moment, please. That's right. Don't quote me. I was looking at the wrong thing. I was almost going to say this piece is too wide. The piece that is 6.5 inches goes on the right-hand side of the inside front cover. The piece that is 5.5 inches wide goes on the left-hand side of the inside front cover. So that's the correct order. So again, the piece that was 6.5 inches wide, it is going to go on the side closest to the spine, but you want to make sure that it's not going to impede the opening and closing of our album, and that will not, as long as I line it up there again. So let's get out our glue. We can remove the score tape backing from that little piece that we laid down to put our ribbon on. And you could put your seam binding on the top of your page, but I like doing it when I remember, and sometimes I forget and have to do it the other way. I like doing it beforehand. So we're attaching my seam binding right to the base page, if I remember, because you don't run the risk of then ripping your cardstock. So again, I just want to check and make sure that this is all, and it is. You don't want your page, so you want to be able to open the page, but you also want to be able to close the book. And that's why I was making sure that my half-inch tab was not going into the fold of the book. I don't really know how else to say that it's going to make sense. And then give it a good burnish, like so. So this is going to close this way. And then our smaller piece that measures 5.5 by 8 is going to be going on the left-hand side. What I'm looking at here is I want to make sure that my 2 pages are laying nicely with each other. And I don't want to be over the edge here. I am going to flip this all the way around so that I can work on it from the angle that's best for me, so I can see. I just want to make sure that that is okay. Yeah. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip up the whole page, holding it in place. Take my adhesive, and I'm running my adhesive along the inch tab, because I always go, once I have it in position, I don't want to lose. I'll get rid of that little tape backing. And you do have a couple minutes. Remember, with the glue, it's a little forgiving. I want to make sure that it's not hanging over the edge of the book. So I want to make sure that it's not hanging over the outside edge. Again, I want to make sure that it's nice and square, which it is. I'm going to open this up. I know my book's upside down. I'm going to get it turned around for the right orientation. Okay, so we're back in the correct orientation. Burnish, burnish. And there's your flap to the left and your flap to the right. Remember, 6.5 inch flap goes on the right, 5.5 inch flap goes on the left. And if you mess up and you put them the other way, it's okay. Nobody's going to know. I am going to round my corners. You're going to say, well, why didn't you do that first? I find it's easier for me to see if I don't round my corners until I already have the flap in the book in some cases. And this is the one of them. So yes, it's a little cumbersome because I have to manipulate my book. But like I say, it works better for me that way. So there is the flaps. Now we're going to create the waterfall mechanism that's going to go inside these 2 flaps. I'm not going to put it in here yet because I need to put down my pattern paper, then put the waterfall on top of it. So we'll talk about that as we go on. So the waterfall I created, I like to use a base. And the base for my waterfall measures 5 3/4 by 7.5. So it's a 1/2 inch smaller than the book cover is. And then I'm going to have 6 flaps, and each one of those flaps measures 4 3/4 by 5 3/4. And on the 4 3/4 inch side, I scored at 1/2. So on the 4 3/4 inch side, I scored at 1/2. So I'm going to burnish all my score lines. So I'm folding on that score line. Get rid of that backing. I'm going to do this 6 times. And there are several different ways to make a waterfall. I know that, I believe it was Michelle Allen, one of the other designers, has a very cool way of creating waterfalls. I need to give it a try. Just haven't had the time. So I always go back to my standby because it works. Move my stuff out of the way because I'm starting to crowd myself. And the last one. All right. So there's our 6 flips. Here is our base. Now I am going to turn myself around so that I have it where I can see it. Just making sure that you guys can see it. I pushed the base right up into that. Now that my scoreboard is upside down, it's now on the right-hand side, but it would have been the left-hand side corner. So it's nice and square. These are my pages that are going into or onto my waterfall. They are the same width, just they are, after folded, I believe they're 4 1/4. So they're going to go on like so. So I'm going to add my top one. Because remember, this is the top of the waterfall base. And this technique is how I can make my waterfall nice and square. I cannot for the life of me make a waterfall without a base. I've tried, and every time I end up with the same hot mess. So we're going to burnish that, making sure that if there is any glue. Is it, Nicole? I don't know where I learned the method. Probably watched a YouTube and went, oh, I like that. So I don't know who to actually give credit to, but I've been making my waterfalls like this for a long time. So now I'm taking flip 2. Yes, Nicole, the base helps keep it straight, and that's what I struggle with, is without that base, I can't seem to keep my waterfall straight. So your second flap, and I know it's going to be hard to see, you butt that right up to that 1/2 inch tab of the first flap. So if you look, there's my 1/2 inch tab, and I butt the second waterfall right up to the edge of that, not going over, or at least trying not to go over. I'm just going to look, and I always like to look here and make sure, am I still straight? Yes, for the most part I am. And then lay it down and lay that one down. And I know it's going to be hard to see for you guys to see because we're on color, the same color on the same color. But yes, it's nice and straight still, so I'm happy. Give the second one a good burnish. And then we're going to go to the third. And I think now I can get it turned around so that I can see. I only need to get that first one on nice and straight. And then the rest of them seem to lay out for me much nicer. Sometimes I turn it, because if I have it turned to the side, then I can see. So there's my 1/2 inch tab. So what I'm pointing to right now is this 1/2 inch tab. So this, and I want to butt the folded edge of that 1/2 inch tab right up to the raw edge of the one you just placed on. I hope that makes sense. So this is the flap we just placed on. I am butting the new flap right to the raw edge of that one. And then I'm just going to flip it out. I do not miter my tabs on my waterfall because I want them to be nice and square. You can add a 3/8 of an inch piece of pattern paper if you want to camouflage them a little bit. Sometimes I do. In this particular album, I did not. Like I say, looks nice either way. But sometimes I like to do it so that you have a little contrast between your pictures. Okay. Still nice and straight, which is what I'm looking. That's my goal, is to keep everything nice and straight. So now we're on to number 4. So we're halfway there. I'm going to add that one. So again, and you're going to say, but you didn't pre-measure. I said, saying no. I'm making sure that I'm nice and square here, and I'm butting up right to the edge The previous one I laid down. Check it again. Everything's nice and straight. 2 more to go. I think what we're going to do is when I'm done the front inside cover, we're going to flip to the back, and we're going to do that today too. So that would leave next week, we just do the flips and the flaps on the pages. So we were supposed to Zoom tonight in our CCC Friday Zoom group, but Tanya had a tooth pulled and she's not feeling well. So we've postponed and are going to do it next week instead. Okay, I look like I'm a little high here for some reason. That would be because you were a little high. All right. Okay. And we're probably going to cut a little bit off the bottom of this. And I'll explain why in a second. Let's see. No, it's still just slightly out of kilter. See, when it does do that, you sometimes have to manipulate it just a little bit. There we go. All right. So there are our pages, our flaps on our waterfall. And now you're going to say to me, but Bonnie, your bottom one is too long. And for some reason it is. I don't know why, but we are going to fix it. So I'm just going to line up my ruler. I want 1/2 inch on this bottom one. Let's get this in here. So we're going to cut off about 1/4 inch. And that's okay. I'd rather have it too long than too short. Too long, you can cut it off. Too short, you cannot add it back. Let's make sure that I'm nice and straight. And if you still can see the pencil line, you can erase it. Now let's give this a good burnish. And we are going to round these corners. And we're going to do that now. But remember, we're not attaching this because we don't have the pattern paper on the inside front cover. So we're just going to round all those corners. And you'll just keep doing that. And I even round the base sometimes. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. Today I am going to. I am not going to bore you with me rounding the other corners. So you would just keep rounding all remaining 5 corners. And then after you lay, hi Debbie, after you lay your pattern paper down or chosen your pattern paper for the inside front cover, then you are going to adhere your waterfall, keeping it centered top to bottom, right to left. Okay, but I'm not going to adhere it yet because I have not put my pattern paper down. Okay, so that's what we're doing on the front inside cover. And now I'm going to flip us right to the very back of this, and we're going to talk about what we're going to do on the back inside cover. Okay, so move the waterfall out of our way. Move the book we're creating out of our way. Stand that up. Now for the back inside cover measurements, that is on the very last page of these instructions. Let's tie this shut. Like so. Flip to the back. And what's holding this back mechanism shut is these two photo mats. And this flips up and up and down and down. And then there's a little pocket with this booklet that goes inside it. So today what we're going to do is we're going to put on these two flaps at the top and these two flaps at the bottom. We're not going to be putting the pocket in the book on either the inside back cover or on the front flap, okay? Because you have to put your pattern paper down first, then adhere the pockets, because the pockets don't go from side to side. All right, so let's close and close. I love this paper. I'm going to set this aside, and then I am going to bring in the pieces we are going to need. And there's quite a few. Sorry if you heard that. There is a cutting sheet, Sean, in the Scrapbookers Facebook group. I did a PDF when I said I was going live today. So that's where the cutting guide is. Or you can write down the measurements as we go. So let's give you some measurements here. So the first one, the first flap, and these are the bottom flaps I'm talking about. No. These are the top flaps I'm talking about. Sorry, just was having a moment there and I was going, that's not correct. So this is 6.5 by 6.5. Yes, 6.5 by 6.5. This is the flap bottom A. No. Flap top A. 1 minute, please. See, this is what happens when we're live. Sometimes we have to re-look at what we've done. Yes, top A. So it's 6.5 by 6.5, but on one side you're going to make it 1/16 of an inch smaller. And the side that is 6.5 less 1/16, that is the side you want to do your score lines on. So you want to put a score line at 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch. And I wrote TA on it just to make me remember which one this was. So T stands for top and A stands for the A flap. So then we need the bottom flap of A, and it measures 5.5 by 6.5 less 1/16. And again, you're going to turn this one to the 5.5 inch side and you're going to score it at 1/2 and 3/4. And you're saying, well, why are you making them 1/16 of an inch shorter than 6.5? I'm making them that 1/16 of an inch shorter because we don't want them overhanging the back inside cover. And for some reason, I'm looking at this one and I'm going, I think you might have, I need to cut 1/16 of an inch off of this one. So give me 1 second. thought it looked a little wonky when I had this one laying right beneath it, and I went, that doesn't look right. There we go. So do these again. So 5.5 by 6.5 less a 16th. That is the bottom flap. 6.5 by 6.5. And on the 6.5, where you do your scoring, you want that to be a 16th of an inch shorter than a half. So the first measurement is 6.5 less a 16th. I'm not making sense here. I hope I am. And then you're flipping it, and your next one is at 6.5. I know I'm a little short, but that's okay. Nobody's going to know. And then you're scoring at 1/2 and 3/4. It's because I did cut 6.5, but then I scored it the wrong way. So fold on your score lines. Sorry for that little bit of confusion. And you should always dry fit, because if you dry fit, then if something's hanging over, you can, oh, good. Awesome, Sean. All right, so we're going to bring our book back in. So we have the piece that goes at the top, like so. And then we're going to have the other one that comes up from the bottom, like so. And what I want to check for right now is, do we have any, I hope my head is not getting in the picture. We want it as far to that right-hand side of the back inside page, making sure that we're not impeding. Hi, Anna. We're not impeding the folding of the back page. And we're not. And so I can either do this one now, which looks like I am, because I set it in the book. I'm going to line that up, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be fine there too. Yes. So taking off that 16th of an inch will really help to allow you the space to not impede the folding of the book or overhanging on the finished edge of the book. We are going to miter only the 1/2 inch tabs. Like I say, that's all we're mitering. We don't miter the 3/4 inch, and we're leaving that 3/4 inch so we have room for the other things that are going inside. So for right now, fold it back to just your 1/2 inch tab. Dry fit again, just to make sure that you're happy. You don't want to be hanging over the top of the book or the side of the book. And I want to close my book and just make sure everything is okay, and it is. Let's add some adhesive to the 1/2 inch tab. So anybody got exciting plans for this weekend? Square everything up. Lay it down. Again, making sure I'm not going over the top. Stand it up. Feels like I got something binding here, so we're going to know here in about 2 seconds. No. Okay. We're good. And now I'm going to adhere the bottom flap. And if you happen to put these on upside down, it's not a big deal. It'll work. Promise. Okay. Again, I just want to close it. Good there. Add my, miter them first. And the reason we miter is so that nothing is hanging over. Then when you put your pattern paper on, you don't see the edge of it. Hi, Liz. So for the ones that are just joining us, this will stay recorded. We are using Prima's Nature Lover to create this folio. It is, not folio, mini album. It is a mini album that's cover measures 6.5 by 8. There are 3 pages, and we have 3/4 of an inch gussets. And I specifically did that for the Prima's Nature Fair because I wanted to use the butterflies. And the only way I could get the butterflies to fit was by making sure I had big enough gussets. So I'm going to round my corners. And like I said before, I like to round my corners after my pages are in or my flaps are in the book, because I use them to help me guide with lining up. All right, so get the book in the right orientation. There's wording on here, so that kind of helps keep me straight. So this is what's going to happen. And then pocket. You get the book. This pocket will sit on the outside of this flap. So it'll be down here. And these photo mats, what holds the top flap in place, so we don't need to use any magnets. But I'm not putting the pocket on right now. I will give you the measurements for that pocket in a couple of minutes, but we're not going to put that on right now because we want our pattern paper to go down first. So we're going to set the book aside. And now what we are creating is the 2 smaller flaps that go on the inside of those 2 large flaps. So the top B flap measures 5.5 by 6 7/8. And I'll explain. We want to score at 1/2 and 5/8 because we're having an 1/8 of an inch gusset on this. The bottom flap B, it measures, let's turn it this way, 5.5 by 5 7/8. And again, we're scoring at 1/2 and 5/8. And then we're going to burnish those score lines. Now, if you don't care about things being completely square and having the same space around, you could make this width, instead of it being give me a second here. Oh, I was going to say something different, and now I've realized what I did. Sorry. You know how you have those days where you look at something and go, why did I do an 1/8 of an inch? Well, I did an 1/8 of an inch because you needed that for your 1/8 of an inch gusset. Now, if you don't care, if your pages are a bit shorter, instead of making it, 5 7/8, make it 5 3/4 and then do your scoring. I had this crazy idea that I needed to keep my page that I was actually going to decorate at 5 1/4 because I wanted to have enough room for my pattern paper. And on the inside where I put my photo mat, I wanted to have enough room for the smaller piece of pattern paper. So let me bring the book back in. Denise, I used approximately 17 sheets of pattern paper. Let me see if I can see. And what I had for the Nature Lover paper is I was given 3 sheets of each design in the 12 by 12 and a 6 by 6 paper pad. And I have a little bit of paper left over, but I did do a lot of paper piecing. So if you go back and you look at the walkthrough, you can see where I did my paper piecing. Hope that helps, Denise. So because what I was trying to say there, why I made these 5 7/8 was this is the flap that goes here. I wanted to be able to have my photo mat have, let me get my ruler, to be like 3 3/4. and plus have a nice header of pattern paper. So that's why I did the 5 7/8. And I know that doesn't make any sense when I say it out loud to you guys. But it's what I decided to do. And it seemed to work in my head at the time. All right, bring the book back in. So all you have to remember here is which one's going on the top and which one's going on the bottom. So T stands for top, so it's going on the top right here. And B stands for bottom, and it's going on the bottom right here, like so. Okay. And as I am looking at this, I'm going, why are you so much bigger? So give me a second here. I may have written down the wrong measurement and then did a bad cut, because it shouldn't be longer, or maybe I have mixed them up. I think that's what I did. Top, yes. Bottom. Bottom should not be bigger than... One second. See, that's what happens when it's live. Aha. So this is a little smaller than the one I put in my original book. That's okay, because we're just going to cut this one down a little bit. And you know what? If you don't care, it can stay that height. Actually, that kind of looks a little cool. Let's just see what's going on here. You know what? We're going to leave it just the size it is, because I'm liking the way it looks. So that's when you make a mistake and you end up that you like your mistake better than the original. So we're going to glue in the bottom one first. And what you're doing is you're folding it back so you only have the 1/2 inch tab. You're centering it side to side, so it's about 1/2 inch on either side, give or take. Okay, I'm not going to measure because I'm going to start with one and then I'm going to line the other one up to it. So I'm starting with the bottom one. I'm lining it right up along the edge of that 1/4 inch gusset we created. I'm going to add some adhesive. You don't have to miter these corners, or tabs, I should say. Like I say, that's the joys of doing things live. And that's one of the things I like about doing it live, is you get to see that, you know what? We can have bad days. We can have days where we have an oops, and we can learn from it. Or we can decide, you know what? I really like that. And I think I do. So let's turn it around. So now I'm at the top of the book. And I'm putting the flap in that says top B flap. And again, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm also going to use the flap that I put at the bottom of the book and use that as my guide for my measurement, or for my side to side, keeping these two flaps orientated and straight. Like so. I want to make sure it closes. It does. I'm not happy with that. Let's try this one more time. There we go. I'm going to be happy with that. We're going to add adhesive. So this time I'm just keeping it in place. I'm just adding my adhesive, laying it back down, making sure I'm still okay with the orientation. Now I'm going to turn everything around so you can see what we've done. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm so okay with this. So In my original book, these two flaps were a little smaller. For some reason, I made them a little bigger in my second book, which is okay too, because these two inside flaps fold into each other, and then the two outside flaps fold. So we're just going to set the book aside because I'm going to talk about the pockets. We'll make them, but we're not going to put them in the book yet. So you need two pockets. So this is the one that goes on the back inside cover. It measures 2 1/4 by 7. On the 2 1/4 side, you are going to score at 1/2. Then you are going to rotate to the 7-inch side, score at 1/2. Rotate completely the other way, and score at 1/2. And then the pocket that's going on the outside of the bottom flap, so it's going on the outside of this flap. These are the measurements I'm giving you now. So it's the pocket that's going to sit right down here. And I think we're going to make it a little bit smaller because it's going to be, oh no, it's not. It's going to be just fine. All is good. It's 2 1/2. Turn to the 6 1/4 inch side. 6 1/4 by 2 1/2. There, I said it right. 2 1/2 by 6 1/4. Yeah, 6 1/4. On the 2 1/2 inch side, score at 1/2. Rotate the other way. Sorry, for some reason here I'm having just a moment. You're going to score at 1/2, turn it completely the other way, and score at 1/2 again. And we're going to fold on all score lines. This is why dry fitting is always important, because you can always change something if you're not really happy with how it's looking. Remember, the cutting guide is just that. It's a guide. It's not something that's written in complete stone. Some things have to be, or your project may not go together, but things like pockets, you can probably do whatever you want with a pocket. All right, so let's bring this back in here, because I'm looking at this and going, yes, it's the smaller pocket. So this pocket, which is the smaller one, is going here on the outside, and you're bringing it, I'm bringing it right down to the bottom. Yes, right down to the bottom for it to fit. But you don't want to put it on yet because you want to put your pattern paper on the bottom. Pattern paper first, then pocket. And the pocket is going to sit right down at that score line. And you're just going to center it side to side. Okay, that's the one pocket. The second pocket, which is the wider one, it's going at the bottom on the inside of the back cover. And again, you're going to set it wherever you'd like it to be. Closer to the bottom, I think, is nice because of the little booklet that's going in it. And you're just centering it side to side. But we're not adding those yet because we have to have our pattern paper in place. I'm just going to set them in the book. And the last couple of things we need to talk about before we move on today are the 2 photo mats that go in the pocket that's on that front flap. And they measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/4. And then the booklet that's going in the pocket that's on the back inside cover. So here's the finished book. So here is our 2 photo mats that sit in the front pocket. And here is the booklet that sits in the back pocket. Okay. And I'm just looking at this and I'm going, why is it so different? But it's because my flaps are bigger, which is okay. And if you want the smaller flap, just go back and cut a little bit off of this one. So you could cut it down to you could cut it down to so it would have been give me 1 second here so I have to give you a straight measurement. So 5 5/8 plus 3/4 of an inch. Somebody that's a math person can tell me what that is. I taught preschool, so we got to count on our fingers. So for the booklet, it is 10 scored at 5 by 6.5. And for the page that you're going to put inside the booklet, it's 5.5 by 6.25. And on the 5.5 inch side, you score at 1/2. And you want to cut your insert page 1/16 of an inch less than 5.5, so that when you glue it into your booklet, and this is the wrong size, we're going to fix that. So instead of our booklet, hang on a second here. So instead of our booklet being 6.5, I'd like you to make it lost the page to my instructions. We're going to wing it. We're going to make our booklet 6.25 instead of 6.5. And whatever my instructions are, we're going to ignore them. Not quite sure what went on here. I must have fell on the floor. It's going in just like this. There we go. So whatever my instructions say, adjust them, since I can't seem to find them right now. 6.25 by 10, score at 5. Then for the page that's going to go in the booklet, it is 5.5 less the 16th by 6.25. It goes in the booklet like so. What you're lining up is you're lining up the right-hand side of this page. So you want them to line up. You want there to be a little bit of a gusset here so that when you fold your book over, it closes nicely. So let's add our glue. Let's miter it first. And glue. So I'm going to go back and look at my PDF and make sure that I have that written correctly for the booklet. And if I can change it, I will change it. Otherwise, it'll stay as is. I should be able to change it. Swap it out for a different one. So you're going to have a little bit of a gap here, but you need that gap so that your booklet closes. And there's that booklet that is going into this pocket that is on the inside back cover. And you can round those pages. So that is as far as we are taking our project for today. Sorry about that little oops at the end there about the booklet. I will figure it out and get it corrected in the instructions. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. Charisse, I know you're part of our Zoom group usually on Friday nights, so I hope you saw the message that there is no Zoom tonight because Tanya is not feeling well. And we will see everyone next Friday. We'll do the same time, 2 o'clock, and we'll get the flips and flaps on each page. So hope you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.